Wadiko something you learned embarrassingly latiokl in life. Also make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy. I live near the hospital for joint disease socks. When I was a kid I thought it was a special hospital for people who had two different diseases at the same time. That's adorable. Things are not supposed to start to get blurry at about 15 to 20 feet. Learned I needed glasses at like 26 from one of these threads. Yes people, you are supposed to be able to see individual leaves on trees. Hope someone else can be helped like I was. I'll never forget the first time I looked up into the night sky after I got glasses, and realized that you can, in fact, see the moon clearly. I assumed people who depicted it in art were taking creative license bc they knew it should look like that for some reason, and that the human eye was incapable of seeing the moon without also seeing two other, blurrier moons, sort of overlapping it. It blew my mind. That a prostitute doesn't actually sell a piece of their body. Backstory, my mom and I were watching the scene from Titanic where Jack tells Rose that he painted a one-legged prostitute. I asked my mom what a prostitute was and she told me octitico, someone who sells their body for money. I could not fathom why someone would sell their leg for like $30. LOL, that was just a perfect confluence of unrelated information to confuse you. It was a completely logical connection to make. When people say quote unquote I thought they were saying quote unquote. I always thought it was oct quote, end quote iakl. Until I was in school for environmental studies, I thought oct morning dove iakl was oct morning dove ocl. I usually heard them calling in the mornings, so oct morning gokl made sense to me. I just learned this now. Thanks. My dad was fond of framing questions to my brother and or me regarding just what on earth we were doing, up to age 10 or so, when it no longer seemed necessary, using the term pray tell, as in what are you doing with the tools, pray tell. I presumed a prattle was a gentle equivalent to goofball or dummy. One day I corrected my brother about some misconception he had, addressing him as you prattle. What did you call him? Asked Dad, who happened to be nearby. A prattle. You call us that all the time. I do. Yeah, you say what is that supposed to be, prattle? I'd never seen him laugh through a facepalm before. Knowledge is power, Francis Bacon. That pineapples grow on the ground, and not in a tree. I actually just learned this just now at 28 years old. When I was a teenager, I posted a status online that said I was jacking offical. I thought that meant you were just bored and wasting time until my older sister messaged me, horrified. When I was a teenager, I thought the expression to eat someone out meant the same thing as to chew someone out. Unfortunately I was educated on this after I told someone in a church that I wasn't expecting to be eaten out that morning at breakfast. I was 17 LMAO. That bonsai are not a species of tree, but a way to grow them. Any tree can be a bonsai. I did not know that. My sister was in her 50s when she found out the meaning of, you have an addictive personality. She thought after all these years of therapy that it meant that people were addicted to her personality. We laugh hysterically when we talk about this, in a very sad way. Coca and cocoa are two different plants, not one magical organism LOL. If one plant gave us both cocaine and chocolate, that would be a compelling reason to believe there is a God and he wants us to fucking party. Let me tell you about how I thought you were awarded a Pulitzer Prize. Not too late in life, but I thought my parents were making rum and cokes until I went to college. Which, I think is a much better name for the drink anyway. Rum and coke. Why I was really young, my sister told me she threw her guts up. So I was really afraid of vomiting my entire insides up for years. Houston is not the name of the guy astronauts talk to. Houston, we have a problem, your name isn't Houston. I learned that pork and beans are not called cowboy beans. I was 18 and asked a grocery store clerk to help me find the cowboy beans. We were looking everywhere and I was getting frustrated because I know that every store carries these beans. After a while I pick up a pork and beans can with a picture and say, see, it looks just like this. He says, you mean pork and beans? Then I realize that my mom called them that so that I would eat them. The look of disappointment from that grocery store clerk haunts me to this day. Dude, that's fucking hilarious. This is something my little sister did through high school. We're about 8 years apart, so we never overlapped in school. She's always been a straight A student, and I found out she worked extra hard because she wanted to catch up to me in school. So we could be in school at the same time. I almost cried. Thadako's actually adorable. When you're an adult, you shouldn't buy shoes that are a little loose, in case you get taller. I was probably 21 or 22 when I learned that whole milk is only 3% fat. I always thought it was 100, and when I saw reduced as being 2% I thought, why wouldn't they do 50% or somewhere in the middle? Would 100% fat not just be literal fat? I thought that horses had toes until I was 22. I thought the hoof was a octorschuyok and the toes were tucked inside. How did I learn how wrong I was, you ask? I was walking past a cavalry museum and saw a horse statue and loudly remarked, "It must hurt so bad when they fold a horsico's toes to put them into the shoe." OCL. Dozens of horse enthusiasts turned and looked at me with wild bewilderment in their eyes. This one absolutely made me giggle. Just the visual of this happening is fantastic. I was maybe 17 or 18 before learning that it was Timbuktu, not Timbuktu. I thought there was an original Timbuk out there somewhere. I was about 25 when I found out Timbuktu was a real place. I had thought it was just an expression for a faraway place.
You said it, you
That all the places in France were not named after wines.
and I'm not supposed to. And I can go back to
Some were named after cheeses.
and I can find something else that I'm supposed to do.
Birds have sex. I thought that the mother bird laid the egg and the father fur released it later. I was 18 and asked my mother what the birds were doing. Gosh. To be fair, that's how some fish reproduce. I thought that ox prima donna was prima donna and that it meant everything before the singer Madonna, and just assumed she was some kind of universal queen. I also thought it was prima donna, but I thought it just meant that the person was starting to behave like Madonna. Like they're prima donna now and will eventually go full Madonna. That a coma was a coma. Until I was probably 19 / I thought it was akama. I thought you fell into akama. For the longest time I thought astigmatism was astigmatism. So I think we cancel each other out. You don't have to rip the plastic top off of your new deodorant with your teeth or pliers or anything. You can just turn the base until it comes up enough to just take it off.
Because baby, I'm not good
Oh
enough.
my god.
Yes, you are.
No.
I should return this Masteroco's degree to the university. The saying is, nip it in the bud, and not in fact / nip it in the butt /. Screenshot taken. Sent to my husband. I did not know I was circumcised until I was 15 or 16. I was arguing with a girl online. I thought the head was the foreskin and that circumcision cut the actual head of the penis off. I thought sedan was a car brand until I was 22. That one of the 2 puppies I was given as a toddler went to live on a farm. It was the puppy that savagely bit everyone. I was like, 22. Working at a restaurant making myself a salad, and I asked the chef for bumps and he stared at me for like 60 solid seconds trying to figure out what I wanted. I explained to him I wanted bumps for my salad. I have all the rest of the toppings but now needed bumps. Guys, OCZ, my family told me croutons were called bumps my entire life. I called my dad that night and confirmed that bumps are indeed, actually called croutons. He thought you were asking for Coke, dude. I did not know tortilla chips were made out of tortillas until I was 20 years old and saw the line cook at my job cut up a tortilla and throw it in the deep fryer. Oh. A few months ago 2 of my colleagues both handed in their notice at around the same time. I kept reading / hearing the sentence ox theakor both moving on to pastures nuwako being thrown about the office in the weeks leading up to them leaving, and I had no heard this phrase before and thought that was the name of the rival company that they were going to. I thought it was weird that nobody was talking about how they were both leaving for the same company. I was in the car with one of the ones who was leaving and said, "Oxo, where is that you and X are going to be working? Is it Oko?" And just before I could embarrass myself and say Ox pastures nuwako, they interrupted me and said the Akor not going to the same place and asked me where I had heard that. I think at that moment I realized I was stupid and did not mention it again. I must be dumber because I have no clue what pastures new is supposed to be. I think I was in college when I realized that Mario and Luigi are plumbers. I thought they just went and up down these tubes just because that was the theme of the game. Just this week I found out about the little button on the back of the socket driver that pushes the socket off. I have owned the same socket set for about 30 years, and I have a dedicated screwdriver that I keep with my sockets and use to pry them off when I'm done using them. I will be 55 years old soon. Though Mick Jagger Oko's name was Mick Jagger, and people just never said his first name for some reason. Fucking hell, second comment and already learning. My parents were divorced the whole time and my mom was not, in fact, taking a vacation LMAO. Sorry, Forrest. Not me but my mom, waiting for the shower to be warm before stepping in. She grew up with a bathtub most of her life, and didn't get a shower until she moved out of my grandparents' place in her 20s. She was apparently talking to a coworker about the winter weather one morning. While lamenting, she goes, "And don't you just hate getting into a cold shower on these cold days? It takes so long for the water to get warm." Coworker, Cheryl. You know you can just wait until the water gets warm, then hop in. I feel like a component of this was just not wanting to waste water. That Idako's not Ochchester Drawersockle but a Ochchest of Drawersockle LOL. Jackalopes are mythical creatures. I was 18 I think. To be fair, I've seen a platypus, rhino, and a giraffe. Those are some BS animals. Narwhals. Narwhals are a real thing. While watching Game of Thrones, I asked my husband when dragons went extinct. He had to pause the show for that one. Saint George killed the last dragon. I was taught it's fine to flush tampons down the toilet, and would even flush pads and sponges when I'd clean the bathroom. I didn't learn that it was a huge no-no until sometime in my mid to late 20s. I'm surprised the pipes at the house I grew up in weren't constantly exploding. Tampons are one thing, a lot of people I know grew up doing / believing that, but I am baffled by your inclusion of sponges. Like, a whole ass sponge? You were just throwing entire sponges in the toilet and flushing? That's way more impressive non-exploding pipes MOCSE. I thought ponies were just baby horses until the age of 23. Edit, until I was 23, I did not think horses aged like turtles. I'm dumb, but not that dumb. Okay, so I read that as baby horses are known as ponies until they officially become adult horses at the age of 23. Considering that the average lifespan of a horse is like 30 years or something, I was shocked that the commenters below you had thought the exact same statistic as you did. I suspected it was the same with lots of people, but I found out it wasn't guerrilla warfare but guerrilla warfare maybe in my 20s. The disappoints of growing up, they just keep coming. I'll take it a step further. I thought it was racist because I always heard about the guerrilla fighters in Africa. I was just like, dude, they're soldiers. You can keep that shit to yourself. That the porta potty doesn't somehow know when someone goes inside. That the sign only changes to octocupied when you physically lock the door. Many people walked in on me during my childhood. Edit, I was dragged to many outdoor craft fairs and whatnot as a child. So I had to use them more often than most other children. After the first one, didn't you think even if the sign outside says occupied, I better lock it this time? I used to think that the Diet Coke bottles on the side of the road, which were half full of pale yellow liquid, were unfinished Diet Cokes that had been bleached by the sun. About 2 years ago I saw one of these bottles being ejected from a truck and I realized the awful truth. I'm 53.